Welcome to Tatum Talks, the official podcast of British Speedway legend Kelvin Tatum. I'm Ian Brannan, and together we're looking ahead to the 2025 British Speedway season. Okay, here he is then, Kelvin Tatum MBE, out of your winter hibernation. You've been keeping yourself busy, Kelv, though. You've been on the telly doing commentary on motocross, but Speedway season ahoy now.
Absolutely, yes. It's not too much longer to wait, really. Delighted to see that the weather's behaved, actually, as the season started for Niels Christian Iversen. His testimonial, fully deserved. And, of course, the Peter Craven Memorial. What a lineup that was. Chilly, but dry, which is great news, and long may that continue. But no, I've been doing a bit of motocross. I've been doing the World Championship in the last few weeks. Got one coming up this weekend as well. So that's been going along, quite challenging, but enjoying it nonetheless.
Yeah, eyes in the back of your head in that sport. You think Speedway's complicated, then blimey. So
there are 40 of them to get in these tracks.
And all in different looking bikes and different looking gear, wow. We'll talk about British Speedway in a sec. Let's start off by the hot topic at the moment, of course, is the Speedway Grand Prix, which doesn't actually get underway until May, but a lot of talk in Britain about the Grand Prix series coming here, of course. First of all, we're losing Cardiff. That has been removed from the schedule at fairly short notice, and everybody's going to be sad to see that go. For Belle Vue, though, they did have, originally, they were going to be the second Grand Prix in British Speedway as such, a new addition, but now they're hosting 2 days on the trot, Friday and Saturday, one of them replacing Cardiff, and then effectively their own Grand Prix, I guess you'd say. So all eyes on the National Speedway Stadium. But first of all, your thoughts on that decision. Over 20 years of Grand Prix at Cardiff, and it's to be no more, unfortunately.
I can't describe it any other way than being rather saddened by it, because when we first went down there in 2001, it was just wonderful. And to walk into a stadium of that stature and to be able to run a Speedway event in there was truly extraordinary, and been very fortunate enough to have gone to the majority of them. Last year, you know, there's been some incredible scenes. Everybody is aware of the Chris Harris victory, which was just outstanding that day. But, last year with a British 1-2, which was historic, and not to go back, I think it will sadden quite a lot of people, and they will be probably scratching their heads a little bit. Why? It's financial. I think that's probably common knowledge that you don't have to be Einstein to figure that out. But I think I'm saddened by it. I think it's possibly the end of Cardiff. I don't want it to be, but it's possibly the end of Cardiff. And we moved to a double header, which we've had when we had it COVID. Double headers work. There's no question about that. They're quite cool, actually, double headers. But I think Belle Vue is just an outstanding venue. We see that. The racing there is extraordinary. But you won't have the same attendance. So that will be the compromise going to Manchester. But saddened that it's gone. But life goes on, and we have to look forward to, well, fingers crossed that Manchester weather behaves and we have 2 fantastic nights of Speedway, which, if the weather is on our side, we will get. It's guaranteed. The track is just too good with that quality of lineup for it not to be, fabulous.
I did an interview for the British Speedway podcast with Phil Morris earlier this week, which is available now. And in that, we obviously discussed Cardiff, he being a proud Welshman. I think officially he was the first person to ride Cardiff. He was the test pilot back in the early days due to his proximity and having a bike. But he was saying that, obviously he's the race director of the FIM. It's not a decision he's made. It's been made, way above his station to remove this. But he's saddened, obviously, but he just wishes if it was going to be taken off the calendar that maybe they'd have said, this will be the last one, and run that final event, as you say, going into it with on the back of a British 1-2 last year, and probably imagine it would have packed the place out if they said this will be the last time we have a Grand Prix at the Principality Stadium. everybody has always said that I'll go next year and never went. All those people who want to go one more time, and all the regulars as well. You could have been looking at the biggest attendance ever potentially if they made a big thing of it.
Yeah, absolutely, and I concur with that. But clearly, the decision was made, as you say, probably from America, because we're all owned by Warner Brothers, and I suspect that it was a decision that was forced upon them in that regard, and they just saw the bottom line. It's been losing money, and the attendance hasn't been the same since before COVID. Post-COVID, it's been down on numbers, but there was a real good feel factor when we left last year. But unfortunately, we won't be able to have that one last hurrah. I hear what you say about that, but business decisions have to be made, I guess. But saddened for me, and no opportunity for one real last go at it. I think you're right. I think if it had been announced that this is the final Grand Prix in Cardiff, I reckon you'd probably get 40,000 there again, because those people that drifted away would return. And also we've got two riders as a minimum that are genuine winners there now, aren't they? Bewley's won it twice. Lambert is the world number 2 looking to kick on. So yeah, shame, real shame.
Not to be, but Manchester will be the beneficiary, and now all eyes will be on Manchester in June, the middle of June, for those back-to-back nights. So you've got a Grand Prix on the Friday night and then on the Saturday night as well. Obviously, it's going to be a smaller attendance, as you said. There's only so many people you can get in, but they are going to be having the temporary seating. Ticket prices are not going to be cheap, but that was never going to be the case. All Grand Prix are more expensive than a regular meeting wherever you go in the world, but that's just economics, I guess. If you want to bring the big show to town, then there are expenses that go with it. Yes,
fees for the FIM, the whole circus that turns up is significant. And I must say that Belle Vue have put their money where their mouths are. They ran the Speedway of Nations, which would not have been a cheap exercise last year, and the weather was pretty grim, to be honest, all week, apart from race night. And then they've taken the plunge to run 2 back-to-back Grand Prix, which I think is admirable. I don't see us going to other parts of the world at the moment. We're certainly not going outside Europe at this stage. I really hope that we are full, but ticket prices, I'm hearing, are high. That I get, because with a reduced attendance, you're not going to get 20,000 people in at Kirkman Hume Lane. The National Speedway Stadium just cannot physically do that. Although it's a wonderful track and a big fast track, it has a relatively small attendance for an international event. I just hope that it's packed to the rafters both nights, and people may just have to put a little bit of a contingency plan to one side for it for the weekend, because I think it could be a real celebration. Because we saw those double headers in COVID, they were really good, actually. They worked, and I don't think the riders minded them. I think when they were there to turn around and do it again the next day, I think they were quite happy with it. So they're used to it, and the majority of them will have done it before. And as I say, the racetrack speaks for itself.
2 home riders for Belle Vue fans to see, though. Brady Kurtz in the regular lineup this year, along with Dan Bewley. So that is certainly going to put them at a big advantage into those meetings. But of course, they'll have the best in the world trying to chase them down. Looking at the Grand Prix in general, we've got some changes as well. A top 10 finish is going to be good enough to give you a shot at getting the final now. So you could have a nightmare and make your way through. But conversely, if you do well in the qualifying heats and you finish top of the pile on the points, you'll be straight through to the final now. So a bit of a change to how that's going to work. And sprint races are being expanded as well for extra points.
Yes, the qualifying system on the Saturday afternoon, or whenever it'll be Saturday afternoon. You're going to have 6 sprint races. You're going to have, those head-to-head timeouts where you're going to have the fastest guys going through, and then the top 4 at the end of it. 16, split up into pairs. So 8 pairs, fastest one going through, and then obviously 8 going out. And with 4 points, Bewley won both of them last year. That's quite significant. That will have a bearing on the World Championship, that's without doubt. regarding the way you get to finals, you will, if you look back at riders that are sort of scraping through and getting in, I think it's going to make it, there's going to be more emphasis on being more consistent in your qualifying races. The benefit of being able to be more consistent there. You're not necessarily, it's going to be potentially harder to make a final if you're having one of those nights where you just get on 8. You know, it's not going to be quite as straightforward, but we'll see. We'll see. I think it's been introduced to mix it up. We've had one rider that's dominated the sport in the last 5 years. And I think Bartosz Marslik, I think the way this is set up, unless he finds, because he wasn't that consistent in the qualifying, in his qualifying races last year. Well, if he doesn't rectify that, there's a possibility he won't be world champion. So I think it will give it more of an open feel, and we'll see. From a point of view of broadcasting, the qualifying will give it so much more interest. It will be much, much more exciting and much more jeopardy. You know, just against the clock to have a start position for the evening. In truth, it wasn't that much on that, really. I don't think they were that fussed. But now, with points and going head-to-head, I think I quite like the idea of that.
Going to be one to watch, and the Speedway Grand Prix series gets underway at the start of May in Landshut in Germany, sending you straight to Bavaria there, Kelv, to get a few flagons in to kick the season off.
Absolutely. It was really good last year with Mikkel Mikkelsen winning his first GP, but the racing there, both Chris and I were concerned that it might be a bit not quite as good as we'd witnessed previously, but hey, it worked out really good. So hopefully we get off to a flying start down there.
Yeah, and then it's going to come thick and fast because the end of the season, we've got the Speedway of Nations, haven't we, to round things off. So that is going to be at Torren at the back end. So the Grand Prix series will be wrapped up before then. Yeah,
we finished quite early with the Grand Prix in Voyens, fairly early, the second weekend of September, which is an early finish for the Grand Prix series. And then we've got a 2 or 3 week break, and then couple of weeks actually off, and then we go straight into the tournament in Torren, which will be chilly there by that time of year. That's cold in Poland in October, but Torren's a great venue. Could be quite an exciting week of World Championship Speedway. I certainly hope so. Anyway, you know, it will be interesting to see how that goes. But yeah, a shortened calendar. It's only the Grand Prix is only just over 4 months, but I think it could be wide open. I think the way they've set that up, with the way you qualify for the latter stages and the big points at the end of the night, I think you could well see that it might just mix it up a wee bit. We'll see. But from the point of view of those slight tweaks they've done with the way you qualify for finals at Speedway Grand Prix, I think it's been thought about. I get the feeling the emphasis is that they want to try and mix it up a bit. And it quite possibly could be, because those nights where you might be struggling for a setup and just not quite getting it right and then dragging it out at the end, it's going to be much more difficult to do that, because when you've got 2 guys going straight through, all of a sudden, you know, then although you got down to 10th, there's only 2 other guys make it. So the chances are slim. So, you know, it's going to be real shootout at the end of the night. Real desperado stuff.
It rewards those riders as well who have had the consistency in the qualifying heats, because I think we have had riders too who finish top of the pile, they get through to the semi-final, they have a bad start and they're out. And then someone like Smarslik, for example, who's had a dodgy night, sneaks into the semi-final by the skin of his teeth, goes through to the final and wins it. So it guarantees that if you've done well in the first 5 heats, you're at the final, no matter what, and you're there.
Well, the perfect example of that was Lebedev's in Riga. Absolutely, you know, he top scored with 14 points, missed the start in the semi-final, didn't make it. Smarslik should have been excluded earlier on in the evening with that crash with Mikkelsen. He then somehow picked himself up. He had a real roller coaster of a night. Ended up winning the Grand Prix. And actually it was sort of like then he stamped his authority on the World Championship as a consequence. That type of scenario, quite possibly, you're not going to be able to have that luxury anymore, where you can dig yourself out of trouble later on in the night. But Lebedev's would have made his first ever final in front of his home crowd, which would have been And would have been deserved, wouldn't it? It would have been deserved because it done so well from his 5 rides. So I'm looking forward to that.
Okay, so Grand Prix kicks off in Landshut 3rd of May, then it's to Warsaw on the 17th, Prague on the 31st, but the night before the 30th is SGP3. June, of course, is dominated by Manchester, and then Gorzów the week after, actually.
Yeah, they're back
21st.
to back,
yeah. And then, busy time in middle of June, and then July, Melilla for SGP2 qualifier. One of the qualifiers for SGP2 actually happening at Glasgow this year as well. Right. Before that, so that gives who's riding for Glasgow? Ashton Bowden, Dan Thompson, Leon Flint, all Glasgow riders who will be hoping to be in that. Then Riga in August for Latvia. That's got an SGP2 as well attached to it. Roslav at the end of August, the August Bank Holiday weekend, 30th of August. And then you've got, the finale, big finale, Vojens, SGP2 final, SGP4 final, and the final round. Then Torren, as you say, first weekend, last weekend of September, first weekend of October, through there. So that's the calendar for SGP and its associated events. So, yeah, busy times. Let's talk about British Speedway then. As we know, we're a little bit underway. We've had a couple of meetings at the time of recording this, the Peter Craven Memorial, Niels Christian Eversen's testimonial, which have had good lineups. You know, Grand Prix riders involved in there, including Jason Doyle. We've also seen Max Frick. We've seen Dan Bewley, Robert Lambert, Brady Kurtz, not least as well. And a few more meetings to come. Ryan Douglas has his testimonial imminent, and the Ben Fund Bonanza is at Oxford on Sunday. So, again, some Grand Prix riders in that, including Jason Doyle is riding in that event for the first time as well. So Niels Christian Eversen rolling back the years at the Peter Craven as well. He came right through the pack from last to first, right round that 3rd and 4th turn, and just held it full gas round the outside and just showed them out how it was done. It was impressive stuff. So good to see some of these experienced hands, I guess, mixing it with the kids of today, Kelv.
Yeah, and Niels Christian Eversen has been a tremendous servant to the Speedway, internationally and domestically, and particularly here in the UK. So it was I was delighted that he had a successful testimonial last weekend, fully deserved, great lineup, and the weather behaved. So absolutely, Peter Craven Memorial now is becoming quite a meeting. And, it's attracting some world-class performers. Janowski was there. As you say, Freddie Lindgren is over for his sort of early season sort of warm-up before he disappears off to the continent. But no, terrific. And I think that we've got Matti Zagar back in the league as well, who's into his 40s like Niels is, but showing no signs of wanting to retire because they're still able to ride at a really good level. And Niels, although he isn't quite the rider he was, 5-6 years ago, certainly is still doing a really good job for his club. So that's good to see. But Brady Kurtz winning back-to-back Craven, Peter Craven Memorials, that's quite an effort, actually, when you consider the lineup. And interesting to see that Kurtz, a fully fledged Grand Prix rider, 4 Aussies in the Grand Prix for 2025. He could well have quite an impact, Kurtz, because there's no doubt that he is riding out of his skin. But, terrific lineup. So, nice way to get the season underway.
Well, let's have a look through each of the teams then lining up in the ROWE Motor Oil Premiership for 2025. And we'll start with the reigning champions then, the Belle Vue Aces, who have a very familiar lineup to that of last year. They've got some riders back from injury, particularly Tate Zischke, who crashed out on his debut in a very painful manner indeed. Quite a gruesome injury he had with the chain adjuster on the back of his bike. The bike flipped round and the chain adjuster met him a little too closely and became part of Tate Zischke for a brief period of time. And that caused a lot of damage, actually, and it took him all the way through the winter to get back to fitness again. But he's now back on a bike and fully fit, and he's lining up with Belle Vue and Workington in the championship. But Brady Kurtz leading the line, along with Dan Bewley. So 2 Grand Prix riders in the Belle Vue Aces lineup. The only addition, really, is Zach Cook, who comes in place of his brother Ben, who's moved off to Kings Lynn. And Zach was on the money, actually, at the Peter Craven. When I saw him, he was gating well. There was one heat. He was out up against Brady Kurtz and Dan Bewley in the same heat, and he led the two of them for a lap and a half. And then it was really just a bit of experience, really, that told in the end. And Brady and Dan both knew where to put the bike, and they got past him. But certainly some encouraging signs from his first rides as a Belle Vue ace.
Yeah, Ben, his brother, rode well for Belle Vue. A little surprised that Ben moved on, in truth. But Zach Cook into the lineup, another rider that has a lot of speed, and he'll need it there at the National Speedway Stadium. Yeah, maybe just a little bit of lack of experience would explain it, although Brady Kurtz and Dan Bewley are particularly difficult to keep behind, because if you cover one, then the other one will go around the other side of you. It will probably one of the stiffest tests you'll ever have all season long in the very first meeting when you've been chased by those two. But as you rightly say, that's encouraging signs, and Mark Lemon will be pleased to see that Zach. And I think they've been around long enough now, those two boys, Ben and Zach, that they're pretty experienced, and I'm sure he'll be excited about the challenge moving forward. Yeah, Kurtz, Bewley, fabulous world-class leaders at the top of the team. Zach Cook coming in, I'm sure he'll settle quite nicely. I think it's a big season for Norwick Bladorn. Bladorn, happy-go-lucky sort of fella. He's quite a character. People like him. I think I'm looking personally, I'd like to see a bit more from him, bit more consistency, a little bit more of an edge to his riding where he delivers a little bit more regularly. I think if he does that, I think they'll be absolutely delighted. Zisk will take a bit of time to find his confidence. Nasty injury, has taken his time. Smashing kid, really enthusiastic. I sincerely hope he bounces back. And Jake Mulford, I think, down the Rising Star, showed signs of being actually quite a useful performer and picking up points when maybe you wouldn't have expected to. So, yeah, I think Litzy, I think he had a slow start, if I remember rightly, last season. It frustrated him, but he finished well. If he can get off to a better start, then Belle Vue will be a threat, no doubt.
I think with regards Ben Cook, of course, he had a good season with Belle Vue. I think it came down with the averages to be a choice between Jamin Lidsley or Ben Cook. One of them had to make way, I think, to stay in the points limits, and so Ben had an offer from Kings Lynn, and off he went. So in comes Zach. Yeah,
I think again that's frustrating. It frustrates me, and I think it probably frustrates fans as well when a rider settles into a team, does quite well, and then because of a number has to move on. That's always been a bit of an aggravation. I think at some point that does need to be looked at, because when you're forever having to change riders, consistency for all concerned, fans in particular, they can get behind riders, they can really support them, and then they become a favourite, and then literally within the season they're gone. If they stay for a little while, I think it helps. But no, I think Belle Vue will be a force to be reckoned with in 25. There's no doubt.
Word of recognition as well for Jake Mulford, sort of following in your footsteps. He's a world long track champion. He won the World Under 23 Long Track Championship last year as well. So well done to him.
Yes, he has. He has some ability in that area, but I also saw some potential for him on the Speedway. So I'm sure he'll be excited about riding for the Belle Vue Aces, and he's got some good people there, to learn from that set high standards. So you'd like to think that he'll be in good company.
Let's move next then to the Birmingham Brummies. We'll just do it in alphabetical order, just so we're not showing preference. Belle Vue were first alphabetically and first last year in the league as well. The Birmingham Brummies then, they've made quite a few changes, Kelvin. I think last time we talked, they hadn't actually filled out their full team, but we now know the full lineup. It will be Tobias Mujalak starting at number 1. He's also captain of the Birmingham Brummies as well at the start of the season. Michael Jepsen Jensen, Mate Zagar, as we mentioned just before. Keenan Roux makes the move over from Ipswich. Jonas Jepsen, Antti Vulas and Jason Edwards will be the rising star. So that's the full lineup for the Birmingham Brummies of 25.
Yeah, an eclectic mix of riders. Rees are quite eye-catching in some ways. Mujalek is a good rider with lots of experience here, got injured last year, didn't return. Good to see him back, because I like the way he rides. He's an exciting rider, and when he rode for Sheffield, he did a good job for them. He really did. And I'd like to think that he will do a good job for the Brummies. Michael Jepsen Jensen, on his day, is genuinely a world-class rider. I saw him when he won that Grand Prix those years ago in Voyens, when he denied Nicky Pedersen. It was an extraordinary night. He went on to win the World Cup as well as youngster with Michael Beck at the time. And both of those two riders, you thought, well, they're going to be superstars. It hasn't quite happened, but Michael Jensen back in British Speedway, I think if he can settle, I think he'll be, he's a very good rider, but he's a bit enigmatic, to me. You never quite know what you're going to get. And I think key for the Brummies is that he is consistent. He consistently performs. Zagar, we know what he can do. He's getting on a bit, hasn't ridden that much in recent times, but he knows Britain very well. And I can't think that I think he'll be decent. I think Keenan Roux actually was riding well at the end of last year and was doing well for Ipswich. I think he's a good signing. And I'd like to think he'll have a bit of a fire in his stomach to actually really prove a point this year. And Antti Vuelis, we saw riding for Belle Vue, went well. Jason Edwards, steady for Sheffield. Needs to just push on a wee bit. But a team that, if they click, Ian, will be a spoiler. Particularly, they need to win at home. Of course, they need to win at home. Yeah, if they can really get to grips with it and settle in, then there will be a tough nut to crack, particularly at their home at Paris. That's my concern for them. How do those faces coming into the teams, like Jepsen Jensen, Zagar, and Jepsen, how do they settle? That's a question mark for me.
Yeah, exactly. And I suppose it may be similar to that Kasperzak question that we've had previously as well, where are these riders going to come in and do what they're capable of? If they do, then that's quite a strong Birmingham lineup. If they don't, then we're going to have the question marks again.
Yes, we are. And as I say, the jury's out on that for me. I'd like to see them because they've stayed in. There were all sorts of question marks about Paris-Bar, the future of the track, and also, but they're back 2025. And I want them to go well. They've remained in the Premiership, which is crucial. So, and they've probably done the very best they can to put in a lineup that is reasonably eye-catching. I'd like to think the fans will be excited about that for the upcoming season.
Well, let's move to the Ipswich Witches next then. And again, a familiar lineup, very little change to last year's. And obviously, Keenan Roux, we just mentioned, has moved out. Moving in to the Ipswich Witches team lineup in his place is Tom Brennan. And it's pretty much a straight swap between the two teams for those riders. So the Ipswich Witches line up with Jason Doyle at number 1. At number 2, not number 2, but the second highest averaged rider will be Emil Saifutinov, Tom Brennan, Danny King, Adam Ellis, Dan Thompson, and Jordan Jenkins moves into the Rising Star berth. Dan Thompson's actually outgrown Rising Star now. He's not allowed to be a Rising Star anymore because he's too good. So he's out of that. But Jordan Jenkins does still qualify for that. So he manages to stay in the team, but moving to the Rising Star berth. Two big hitters at number 1 once again. Obviously, injury really scuppered Ipswich's chances last year. But you have to say that the addition of Tom Brennan is not a step backwards.
No, absolutely not. I think that Tom Brennan coming in will make them stronger, I believe, and I'm sure that Richie Hawkins and Chris Louis believes that as well. Tom Brennan is a rider that has an enormous amount of potential, and he's a quality act. He's been sort of knocking on the door. He's got close at the British Championship. He's won Speedway of Nations. Admittedly, he hasn't raced much in those meetings, but he's a rider that a lot of people think is going in the right direction, and I think they were quite keen to have him. And as a consequence, they've got him. I'd like to think that Danny King will be fitter and stronger this year. He had a problem with his hand all year. He's had surgery in the winter. If he can recapture some of his consistency from previous years, then that will be a bonus. Ipswich look really good. I think Jordan Jenkins, is quite fortunate to still be a Rising Star. I think he is. He's quite experienced. He's been around a while. And I think, I think they'll be chuffed to bits to have Jordan Jenkins as a Rising Star and Dan Thompson alongside him. So I look at that lineup and I think if they all stay reasonably fit, they'll be hard to beat, I think. I get the feeling they look a very solid outfit.
Yeah, a couple of notes on that. You mentioned Danny King. He has said to me in an interview that his hand is fixed now. Having had that surgery, it's successful. He had scar tissue growing inside of it from that crash he had at the start of last season, and that's all fixed, so he's got full movement in his hand again. Tom Brennan's actually been busy on the bike in the winter. He's been to Australia, spent a long time in Australia, probably maybe 6 weeks perhaps, racing down there, racing in a few meetings across Australia, particularly at Mildura, stayed over with Justin Sedgman. He was there for a while and then went to America for the GBV USA fixture that happened in California as well. So he's had a lot of bike time, which when you look at the how the racing's gone in terms of particularly Peter Craven Memorial, for example, it was an all-Australia 6-man final with the exception of Dan Bewley. And this extra time that these riders have on the bike perhaps down there does pay dividends at this time of year.
It can do. I'm not sure how much time Jason Doyle's been on the bike. I think he's done a bit of pre-season testing. I don't think he rode in the winter, did he? But there's no doubt. I concur with what you're saying. There's no doubt that if you are active in the winter, you can start the season like a house on fire. You know, you're not rusty. You've got that out of your system. Also, you got your son on your back, Ian. You know, that in itself, when we've had this long, I know we've got some pleasant weather now, but crikey, the winter did seem to drag. It was very damp and wet and miserable. But yeah, as I say, Tom Brennan has been racing abroad, which is a good thing. And he's back. And I'd like to think that he must be very excited about the team he's joining. You know, last year, Birmingham, it never really got going there, having left Belle Vue. He's gone to what I would consider a genuine championship contender in Ipswich. So it's an exciting season ahead for him. And I think it is for the whole club. You know, they were bitterly, when you consider that without Doyle and Saifutinov, it went to the last heat in the semi-finals of the playoffs for Leicester to get the better of them. They only just missed out. I think if they'd had Doyle and Saifutinov, they would have won last year. I think they would have won the Premiership, but they're back, and in truth, if in lots of regards, they look stronger than they did last year.
It's going to be an interesting start on Monday. It's the Knockout Cup, but Ipswich are travelling to the National Speedway Stadium. It's Belle Vue versus Ipswich as season opener. So that is
that's a tasty fixture, isn't it?
Yeah. So that's my job on Monday night. So looking forward to that. But obviously, one of those sides is going to go out of the Knockout Cup as well. So that is going to be sorted out in the next week. It's home and away in that first week. So Ipswich then looking strong. Where do we go next? Let's go to Kings Lynn is next in the alphabet, isn't it? And this is an interesting lineup. This some familiarity, some new faces as well, but not entirely new because one of those new faces is Chris Harris, and everybody knows Chris Harris's face. But he's finally a Kings Lynn rider. He's made
the oldest new face on the block.
Yeah, you can't. I'm stretching it to call Chris Harris a new face, but he kind of is. Bizarrely, he is. So Ben Cook lines up at number 1 for the Kings Lynn Stars. Richard Lawson, Niels Christian Everson, Nikolai Klint, Jan Kvek, Chris Harris and Ashton Bowden. Now, Chris Harris starts at reserve in the Kings Lynn Stars lineup. Ben Cook starts at number 1. How's this possible, you might ask? Well, look at the averages. The top average rider is Ben Cook on 6.99. The bottom average rider is Chris Harris on 6.06. It's very tight between those riders. Ashton Bowden, of course, rising star. We are going to see potentially a similar kind of outlook here to Peterborough a few years ago, where, again, a Rob Lyons side, they're always going to have a strong rider at reserve here, Kelvin, and that could make a big difference.
Well, it certainly did to Dad's Army, didn't it? In the Peterborough Panthers, when they won the league title, they had Hans Andersen, they had Scott Nichols. They always had actually an international rider riding down at number 6, and it appear that will be the same with Kings Lynn. I tell you what, they could be a dark horse. They've had some dreadful seasons in the recent past, and you have to feel for them up there. And it's actually the first venue we go to on TNT in 2025. And, you know, I don't have any skin in the game at all, but I would like to see them have a little bit of success. because it's been pretty miserable for them. When you consider they had Artem Laguta in the team in recent seasons, and whatever they've done, it just has backfired. You know, the Michalak turned up last year, got injured, never turned up again. It really hasn't clicked for them at all in recent times. And Rob Lyon, I mean, after winning the championship with Peterborough Panthers, subsequently the following seasons have been absolutely awful. And he really has had to stand there. How he's managed to do it and kept a brave face on it, I don't know. I think I might have just thrown the towel in, thrown my program down and said, sod this, I'm off. But fair play to him, he's back. He's a good man, Mr. Lyon. And I hope they have a good team. And they've got a team there that's rock solid, isn't it? It's rock solid. You're going to see changes down at reserve with the rolling averages. It's all going to switch around. But Jan Kvek coming in, you know, Kvek. I could see Kvek actually being their leader, because if he kicks on, he settled in really quickly at a track that's not easy. A lot of people go there and they don't like it. You know, it's really grippy. It's a bit quirky, that surface they've got there. Great shape, always has been. But no, I'm really interested to see. And as I say, purely from a point of view of the fact that they've been in the doldrums recently, they would, you know, I think if they could make the playoffs, I think they'd be absolutely chuffed to bits.
They've certainly got a lot of experience in the side as well. Nikolai Clint is going to be the captain. Of course, he's been at Kings Lynn on and off for you know, many years now through the course of his career. Niels Christian Iversen, of course, a Kings Lynn legend, just had his testimonial there again, you know, on form on Monday night when we saw him at the National Speedway Stadium. Richard Lawson coming back in. These are all riders, though, are going to get stuck in. And I think we had a similar conversation about Leicester this time last year, that these are all riders that are familiar with British Speedway. They know what's required. You know what Bomber's going to give. He's going to give 110% every single meeting. And they're going to get stuck in when they need to get stuck in.
Yeah, absolutely. They're going to have a good attitude. And, you know, Richard Lawson and Chris Harris have been around a long time, like Niels Christian Iversen. And they will have a work ethic and a pride in their performance that you would suggest will keep it going. And I was surprised that Ashton Bowden actually left the Spires, the Oxford Spires, not the Oxford Cheetahs, the Oxford Spires. I thought he may have stayed there for a bit longer, but got to say, you know, I think he's joining a team with that lineup that could be quite exciting for him. So, yeah, experienced side, evenly balanced, could prove if they get off to a good start. There's no reason why they shouldn't. Nikolai Clint coming back from injury, nasty injury, neck injury. I spoke to him last year. He was struggling to get over it, but I've seen some footage of him on social. He's been out and about riding. So, yeah, I'm sure he's really determined to get off to a good start and have a good season. Kings Lynn could well be a team that could surprise one or two.
I think with regards to Ashton Bowden, first of all, he's a Kings Lynn lad, so obviously it's a bit handier for him there. But I think Bomber's taken him under his wing a little bit. Obviously, Chris Harris and he were riding at Oxford, and they both moved over to Kings Lynn. They're also both riding together for Glasgow as well in the championship, and I think they'll be paired together, actually riding together as 1 and 2. I think Bowden's at number 2, maybe with Glasgow, I think I've read. So they are spending a lot of time together, so there might be a bit of a synergy there between those two at reserve, versus obviously a partnership they're going to be carrying out at the top end of the team for Glasgow. So, I don't know.
I hear what you say, but I don't put a tremendous amount of store in that. I think because Chris Harris, you would think, isn't going to be at reserve for that long. I think that will be a rolling scenario throughout the season. But, yeah, you know, Harris is somebody that Ashton Bowden can learn from in the regard of his commitment to the cause. I think he's a bit chaotic at times, Chris. You know, he turns up, it's a bit like Curbside Motors when he turns up. There's bikes and bits and people everywhere. And he's running around looking after his boy and he's dashing here and he's dashing there. I don't think it's quite the ideal preparation for each Speedway match, but it works for Chris. But I think Ashton he will be, if he's around Chris on a regular basis, I think just the fact that Chris can just literally park a bad meeting and come back with a fresh attitude every single time, that in itself is brilliant. So, yeah, I wish them all the very best. You know, I think Kings Lynn deserve a good season.
Leicester Lions defeated finalists in the Premiership playoffs last year, of course. obviously they want to go one better. There's only one place they can go, and that is to win the title this year. Defeated by Belle Vue, and they have, again, a familiar lineup. However, we do have one change to the lineup, which has been announced while we've been recording this podcast, actually. I'll run through it for you. Max Frick will start at number 1, of course, Grand Prix rider, lots of experience. In fact, the top point scorer last year in British Speedway. He sort of goes under the radar, but ignoring averages and stuff, he actually got the most combined points through the course of the season. Sam Masters, number 2, second in the averages, so number 5 probably, I would have thought. Ryan Douglas, Luke Becker, Kyle Howarth makes the move from Sheffield. Now, it was supposed to be Craig Cook, but he has dropped out right at this moment that we're recording this, and so he's been replaced by Drew Kemp. Drew Kemp comes in to the Leicester Lions lineup for the start of the season, and Sam Hagan will be the rising star. So again, familiar lineup. I'm looking at the main addition there, Kyle Howarth coming in. You know what he can do. Big move that. He's been with Sheffield a long time. Sheffield's captain, making the move back to Leicester. He's ridden with Leicester and under Stuart Dixon at Leicester for a while back in the Championship days. They were a successful side then. They were defeating everybody when Kyle Howarth was there, and he was there as captain. So that's a solid addition, I think, from the terms of the team and as we say, getting stuck in and all that kind of stuff. But otherwise, pretty much as you were for Leicester.
Yeah, I'd like to see that Kyle Howarth sort of recaptures some of the sparkle that he showed a year or two ago. I think maybe he just went a bit stale at Sheffield. He just seemed to struggle. There was no lack of effort from Kyle at riding for the Tigers, but it just seemed that he just couldn't quite manage to get the points that he was capable of. Maybe at Leicester, slightly smaller track. It's a track he's familiar with. That may just pay to his strengths. I'm just a little bit hesitant to say it's a fantastic move because Richard Lawson, who he's replacing effectively, is rock solid. And I think Lawson possibly could be a miss for the Leicester Lions because Lawson will be definitely a good addition for the Kings Lynn side. So Kyle Howarth, yeah, I can see that he is familiar with the surroundings. He knows what it's all about there, but will have to step it up. I think Drew Kemp coming in to replace Craig Cook. Obviously, he's well known to Stuart Dixon, and I'd like to think that he should settle in quite quickly. Sam Hagan is a big season ahead. He's been riding abroad. I get the feeling he's been out in Australia.
Yes, he has. Yeah.
I'm not quite sure what he got up to there, but Sam won the under-21 British Championship last year and at times didn't quite kick on in the Premiership, but maybe this is the season where we see that happen. But yeah, again, a nice-looking lineup, with the Aussies there at the top. Luke Becker is a solid performer. Whether they'll reproduce what they did last year or not, I don't know. I can't quite make up my mind whether they go quite as far. But again, Stuart Dixon's this sort of guy that can really motivate a team and get the best from his team. And he got a great run of form. They kind of ran out of steam when they got to the playoffs last year. They didn't reproduce. They had been on that incredible run of form where they could have actually topped the table going into the playoffs. Didn't quite happen. But yeah, you wouldn't put it past him. He'll certainly have desires on winning, not just making the numbers up. He'll be certainly looking at winning, Stuart.
You can rely on that. Sam Hagan had an unfortunate trip to Australia, went all the way there, staying with Justin Sedgman. He went with Tom Brennan, and I think it was his first meeting. He actually had a collision with Justin Sedgman, and so his host while he was there and Sam unfortunately shared the same ambulance, and Sam came away with concussion, so that kind of ruled him out a lot of the meetings he was going to do. He did eventually do some second halves in Australia, still decent upcoming talent in those, and he won them. He got going, but it wasn't what he hoped, unfortunately. But but everything else he achieved last season, of course, is in the record books, and he is the under-21 British champion as well. So Leicester Lions, where have we got next? Oxford. Let's have a quick look at Oxford Spires. They've got Rowan Tungate starting at number 1, 7.71 average. Maciej Janowski will be captain. That was announced yesterday. Charles Wright, Peter Kilderman, Eric Riss, Francis Gusts and Luke Colleen will be the rising star.
Yeah. What do we say about the Oxford Spires? Maciej Janowski needs to get off to a better start than he did last year. He got off to a slow start coming back to British Speedway. He did show signs of real talent and quality at times, but he needs to up his average. He needs to be able to be an 8.5 point rider, I would suggest. He's capable of that, but to lead that team to success, I think he needs to be able to do that. Rowan Tungate, he had a great season. I think he did pretty much what he was asked to do last year. I think that was where Rowan's at. Charles Wright, always giving 100%, needs to stay fit. If he can stay fit and stay out of trouble, which is not always easy with Charles, he tends to run into trouble or find trouble.
Well, trouble finds him.
Yeah, he's always lurking around the corner for Charles. Peter Kilderman, very interesting signing. Peter Kilderman, a rider that a few years ago was, riding in the Grand Prix, winning Grand Prix, really had, it looked to me like he had the world at his feet, and he's just kind of dropped off the radar in recent times. Rode really well for the Swindon Robins in the past. If they can get that rider back, Ian, then that will be a really cool signing. I'm not sure he's quite the same guy. I don't know. As I say, that's the rider they need. And I think Eric Riss, is going to be better this year. He looks like he's trimmed up a bit. Looks fit, raring to go. Francis Gust, another rider that's got a lot of pace. We've seen him in SGP2 a lot. Can go good. Injury prone. He's fragile. He gets hurt. So if he can stay out of trouble, and Luke Colleen down at the rising star stuff, I think it's a team that might struggle. They won't want to hear that. Of course they don't. They're all going to hate me now for saying that. But I think there are some question marks over that team a little bit. But I'm sure they'll be trying to prove me and everybody else wrong if they're being criticised.
As you say, it depends which Peter Kilderman turns up, doesn't it? Largely, and which Janowski turns up as well.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. You can't afford for them guys to be doing 4s and 5s for the first month of the season. Those guys are going to be having to hit double figures, because that's where their management are going to be looking at it, going, well, Peter Schrock is going to be looking to those guys with that sort of CV, ex Grand Prix guys, lots of experience. Janowski's won league titles here in the past. He will be expecting them to produce good performances on a regular basis.
Yeah, we saw Janowski at the Peter Craven Memorial, and he had a mixed night. Finished last in his opening 2 rides, and then came out and beat Jason Doyle. Yeah. So but that's been it, isn't it? That's been how it's been for the last year or two.
Yes, it has. And as I say, they've now re-signed him, which shows faith in him, and he's had a season back in the UK to sort of reacquaint himself with bike setup and conditions over here, because he'd been away for quite some time. So you'd like to think that will help him. And he should now, at home, he should be able to be picking up double figures on a regular basis. He's that good. He's a brilliant rider. Peter Kilderman, he's a different type of rider. He's a leg trailer. He hasn't got the classic style, but it's certainly eye-catching. He's a say, if he can come close to what he was previously, then that will be a great addition. But for me, I need to wait and see on that.
We'll see. He's going to be riding in the Benfund Bonanza on Sunday, actually, so that'll be interesting to see how he goes there. Finally, then, Sheffield Tigers, strong lineup. Jack Holder starts at number 1, Chris Holder, Ty Woffenden, Josh Pickering, Anders Rowe, Daniel Hume back at Premiership level as well, and Leon Flint will be the rising star. Certainly some experience there, and you can see the influence of Simon Stead getting Leon Flint across. He was the first British rider to qualify for the full SGP2 series last year. So Leon Flint bags the rising star. You've got to say he's got to be one of the strongest rising stars that there must be available. Daniel Hume coming back to Sheffield as well, down at the lower end, but keeping the the big hitters and probably, well, 4 big hitters, really, because Josh Pickering wasn't exactly a bystander last year either, was he? But, Jack Holder, Chris Holder and Ty Woofenden back at Sheffield.
Yes, and very eye-catching, continuity with the top 4. I think I like that. I'm sure Damien Bates likes it as well. Simon Stead will be very familiar with the way they work. Chris Holder riding well, almost like ROWE in the years back, isn't he, Chris? You know, he's sharp away from the tapes, back in British Speedway. And, you know, that was a strong performance on Monday at Belle Vue, definitely. So he looks good. Jack Holder sort of faded sort of second half of the season last year, just crept in. The Grand Prix as an automatic qualifier. But, you know, Jack's quality, and he leads from the front. Woofenden should be fully fit. Hasn't ridden a lot in the winter, I don't think. I think he's done a little bit of practice, but he hasn't been competitive. That elbow injury clearly took some time to really recover from. But I'd like to think that he's raring to go. You know, Ty coming into that team, he seems to really enjoy riding for the Tigers, certainly. But yeah, I think Josh Pickering is one of those guys. He's an infectious character, isn't he? You know, he's a cheeky chappy. He's got something to say for himself. And he went through a real purple patch where it really did look like he was almost inspiring that team at times. He really was. But when it really came down to it, they just ran out of steam at the wrong time, in truth. But I think Leon Flint, I'd like to see a bit more from Leon. He's been around a while now. I'd say, you know, he must be feeling that it's an opportunity for him at that team to really establish himself as a second string rider. But I think the Tigers will be, well, they're going to be. You can't not be with that sort of lineup. They will be a major threat. And I think, no question, having won the title a couple of years ago, they'll be looking for more of that.
Yeah, well, that's it, isn't it? Of course, they lost out this last year, but they did get their hands on the Knockout Cup, so they did get some silverware in the end. But yeah, for the Sheffield Tigers, looking to get that league title off of Belle Vue and bring it over the other side of the Pennines. So that it covers us off for the ROWE Motor All Premiership class of 2025. And well, I don't want you to go out and pick an all-out number. Actually, no, I do. Go on. You've bigged up what? Belle Vue? You think Kings Lynn could be dark horses to watch? Sheffield are going to be there or thereabouts. Yeah. Ipswich.
I can't look further than Ipswich. I can't. I look at that team and I just think if they stay together, I think they would have won it last year if Seifutenhoff and Doyle hadn't got hurt. I just think that they were the best team, and I think they're the best team again. And signing Brennan, I think it makes them stronger. I think they've been cute. I think they've been, the way it's worked out, they've done a Matt Ford with the pool lineups. They've got a really good tail end because Dan Thompson's useful. And there's no doubt Jordan Jenkins is quite a handy rider as well. So I think they've got a very nice balance to the team. Danny King will be very keen to back up the top 2. Very keen. And I think there might be a bit of rivalry and competition between him and Brennan for that third heat leader spot. And that's always good news. A little bit of motivation within the team like that, I think is sometimes can be a positive. So for me, I think they look great. But all in all, I'd like to think that we've got an exciting campaign ahead and we get off and running. Where am I going? I'm going to Kings Lynn, aren't I? I'm going to Kings Lynn. I think on the end of April. It's actually against the Oxford Spires, so it'll be an early indication of where they are. There'll be obviously plenty of league matches prior to that, but that's my first outing, and we'll keep an eye on it. But looking forward to it. And long may the sunshine reign, Mr. Ian. Long may it rain, because there's no doubt that today is very pleasant indeed.
It's a lovely Speedway day. Back at that part of the season where you're starting to look at the weather apps, and I'm sort of scanning ahead like 5 or 6 days. Yeah. To see, how's it looking next week? How's it looking at Oxford on Sunday? Yeah. How's it looking at Belle Vue next Monday? Oh, there's a cloud.
Yes.
Will it be a problem? But I've got Bet and Fun Bonanza on Sunday at Oxford. These are all on BSN that I'm doing. So Sunday at Oxford. That's a 6 o'clock start. And then on Monday, Belle Vue versus Ipswich in the Knockout Cup. And then what we got, a week or two off, and then it's start of the championship season. We got championship pairs at Workington on Saturday the 5th. Sunday the 6th, it is the Championship League Riders Championship, so 2 back-to-back events there, and then back to Premiership action, Birmingham versus Ipswich. Then I've got Sheffield versus Kings Lynn, and Kings Lynn Leicester, and so it goes.
Fantastic. Well, I think that Monday night between those 2 big hitters in the Premiership, albeit that will be in the Knockout Cup, that'll be an interesting sort of workout for both teams at this early stage, won't it? Might be just a bit of an indication of where we're at, because Ipswich haven't always gone that well, actually, at Belle Vue. It's been a little bit of a tricky one for them, but there's no doubt that both those teams will have very strong ambitions about winning the championship in 25.
But you look at Ipswich and they've got, in terms of Manchester, they've got Danny King, won a British title there. Adam Ellis has won a British title there. They've got Tom Brennan, former Belle Vue rider. You know, Doyle and Saifutinov both won races on Monday night just gone. Saifutinov involved in the race of the night, actually, with Chris Holder. They were trading positions. They were proper throwing the bike at each other as if it was a Grand Prix final almost. It was, it was fantastic, a fantastic heat to watch, that one. So yeah, it's set up perfectly for a bit of an early season classic.
Quite a spectacular night.
Yeah,
could be quite a spectacular night. So a little envious that we're not working on that one, but no doubt that it those type of riders at that type of track, it generally delivers some pretty spectacular stuff. So, no, looking forward to it, and pleased that we've had a chit-chat about the upcoming season.
Brilliant stuff. Cheers, Kelv. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you on the box soon.
Yeah, look forward to it.
My thanks once again to British Speedway legend Kelvin Tatum, also available on TNT Sports once the season gets underway at the end of April. And you can join me on BSN, watch.britishspeedway.co.uk, the place to go to catch the various fixtures on offer there. The season is already underway. Don't forget to like, subscribe and follow this podcast. We'll be back with another episode soon. In the meantime, take care and enjoy your Speedway. Bye-bye.